Hi, and welcome to another training course with American Logistics Academy. So today I want to go ahead and speak about the secrets of dispatching, the tools and softwares and things that can make a difference between a good dispatcher and then a great dispatcher. So we're going to talk about the in and outs, the little detailed secrets, as we can call them, about dispatching, how exactly it can make your job duties a little bit more efficient and effective, in the way where you can pretty much cut maybe half the time of work with these little small detailed information given to you on this video. So one of the things that I always stress about is having a good setup. A good setup on my end is pretty much like situating, having everything in your comfort zone to pretty much help you work at a very fast pace. So that's having a computer, a reliable computer, very reliable internet, it's a working cell phone, a working landline, anything that needs to pretty much be equipped on your end to make your job duties a lot quicker and faster. And the reason why you want to have fast internet, a updated computer, is because in this industry, you tend to work pretty fast in the mornings while you're looking for loads as a freight dispatcher to get these truckers booked. So you have to also keep in mind that just how you're looking for loads, there's other dispatchers and dispatching companies that are looking for loads as well for other truck companies. So you want to have reliable connection, a reliable computer that's up to date, or laptop, desktop, whatever equipment you want to go ahead and use and adapt to. But you want to make sure that you have everything to a certain point where everything is kind of like fast paced, where you can just click on something and your internet's just running by it. You can pretty much just go ahead and get from one page to another. Pretty much always having your tabs open. So I'll go ahead and explain. So you always want to go ahead and have, obviously, like your email. You always want to go ahead and have a load board open, obviously, because that's where you would look for your freight. You always want to have Google open. You also want to have, for example, Google Maps open. This is something that is very useful. It's a tool that you can use. You always want to have your calculator out. You always want to go ahead and have notes out. The reason why you want to have some type of notes out, if you're taking a phone call and you're pretty much getting some information. As far as me, myself, in my opinion, I like everything electronically done, so I eliminate the paper and pen when I can just do everything here. Let's say you're calling about a load and they start to give you some information about it, about what tarps it needs. You can just put tarps and put 8-foot tarp, instead of having to situate yourself and find paper and pen. You can just do everything from the same exact screen that you're staring at now as you're calling them, so everything just falls into one place. You always want to go ahead and pretty much have every type of tool that you need to your possession, to the point where if you need to look through something quickly, then you can. If you got to go on Google, it's there. If you got to go on Google Maps, it's there. If you got to go on the load board, it's there. If you got to go to email, it's there. So pretty much that's one of the best secrets of dispatching that I can go ahead and give you guys, is just always be prepared. Always make sure that your computer's up to date, making sure that your internet connection is very, very high powered. If you could even be connected directly to to the internet box, be completely wired up into internet cable, so so you can get through your job functions very quickly, maneuver from page to page, and pretty much it'll make your job easier as a freight dispatcher. Another thing that I also recommend as a freight dispatcher is having one of these. It doesn't necessarily have to be this specific one, but it's definitely having a headset. And the reason why you want to have a headset, whether you're using some type of program from your computer or just using a basic cell phone, the reason for it is because when you're holding a phone, you have one hand on here. And when you have a headset, your hands are free to type, to write, to do pretty much anything else that you need to do. And you'll understand it when you don't have a headset and you're having to do so many things at the same time. You end up looking like this and not being able to function correctly as you would if you don't have a phone in your hand. So I think it's really important for you to have a headset. It definitely helps out when you're in that crunch moment of having to get something situated and just kind of getting through the process of booking a load or checking a credit for a broker, and pretty much any like crunch situation. Another thing I want to touch base on is load boards. As far as the load board goes, you don't necessarily have to pick a certain one that that is free or one that you have to pay a membership on. Pick the one that mostly adapts to you and your work rate. So for example, this is just a basic one here, is a free one. You don't need, in my opinion, you don't need to have a super upgraded top of the line load board, but you do want something that functions well. And in function, I mean, you want to be able to just go on here, have it load up, be able to click where exactly you want it to go to. I'm using this one as an example since it was down there, and you want to just be able to find loads. You want things to populate. So you don't want to have a load board where it takes 30 to 45 seconds to generate loads. You don't want to be stuck with a load board that isn't complete, or a load board that just isn't established to the point where you can maneuver through the whole entire software at ease and not have to wait a minute or two for it to load. You want to have something that's well built, that well established, and like I said, doesn't necessarily have to be something that you're paying for monthly. That comes down to your own personal self. If you want to have a membership for one of these load boards that you have to pay a membership for, or you can work off of a free one. Like I said, it's whatever adapts to you and your work. You don't necessarily have to choose either one because it's better, but you want to make sure that you have something that's complete and finished and that you're able to get your work done with. So I believe that's a really important thing, because a load board is, if not the most, the most this is like your work tool. It's pretty much like being a mechanic and not having any wrenches or having any tools to fix a vehicle. Then you're pretty much useless. So our load boards are very useful. This is pretty much our tool from day to day to fix anything, because this is the way that we that dispatchers do run their careers. Whether you're just a freight dispatcher or a freight dispatching business owner, you need a well-established load board to make sure that your business or you as an individual have a very well-established load board to make your job duties function a lot easier. Another thing I want to go ahead and touch base on as far as secrets of the dispatching world is being able to work at a fast pace when needed. So in that aspect, I want to go ahead and cover as far as making phone calls and having it's pretty much thinking ahead of the game a little bit. If you know that you have a truck company, let's say that, for example, we'll use this somewhere near in Houston, Texas, and this trucker will be there tomorrow, right? So we'll use tomorrow, the date of the 23rd as an example, Tuesday the 23rd, but he'll be there tomorrow. Why not just think ahead of the game and go ahead and just look, just find freight for the next date available for him. If he's going to be there tomorrow, just find freight for him. Why? The reason why is because you're making your job as a freight dispatcher a lot easier, and you're cutting down some hours from the next day in the morning trying to find this truck a freight for him to haul. So why not think a little bit ahead of the game, give yourself some breathing room, give the trucking company some breathing room, that, give them that sort of security that they will, drop off the next day in Houston, Texas, and already have a load booked for that day in the morning. And on top of that, you're keeping the truck company happy, you're keeping the trucker happy, because the more the trucker moves, the more money he makes per mile. And yourself as a dispatcher or a dispatching business owner, you're going to feel content as well, because you know that you're doing a great job keeping these trucks moving. So as I said, just key pointers to pretty much making a good freight dispatcher to a great freight dispatcher. And it's very little detailed things, in the secret of dispatching that will make you different from other dispatchers. So as I was explaining, you go ahead, find the load, and book a load. As I said, you can go ahead and book this load here from Houston, Texas, over to Fresno, California, and this is pretty much done today. And this trucker won't be there till tomorrow, because that's when he's dropping off. Why not book this ahead of time, get that over with, and move on to your next job duty? You can do this for one individual truck that you're working with, or you can do it for 10, 12 individual trucks that you're working with. It doesn't really matter. It's just you thinking ahead of the game and making sure that you're getting your trucks loaded. The reason why this is important is, as I was explaining, if these trucks aren't moving freight, then you're not getting paid. So, at the end of the day, we're in this career because we want to make a good income. So you're in charge of making your income. Why? Because you have to keep these trucks moving. So the sooner you plan ahead and the sooner you find freight for these trucking companies and these owner-operators, truckers, to move, the easier it is for you to make money. As I've always said, why work, why make money only 8 hours a day when you can make it 24 hours a day? That's how many hours we have in a day. So as these trucks are moving day in and day out, through the morning, through the afternoon, and at nighttime while you're asleep, you still did your job to make sure that these trucks are moving. So you're still making an income regardless, if you think about it closely enough. So that's a really important, secret in the dispatching world. You always want to make sure to think ahead of the game, kind of plan ahead a little bit, kind of make sure that you're moving at a very fast pace, and just trying to get these trucks booked, because it's given that's, like I said, that sense of security, not just to yourself, but to the trucking company and to the truck driver, that everyone is making income. These trucks move, there's income for everyone. So that's a really key point, a very, big secret in the dispatching area, in the industry, that you always want to be ahead of the game and making sure that you are pretty much situating things for these trucks to keep on moving day in and day out. The other thing I want to speak about is negotiation. So as a freight dispatcher, yes, you do still have to negotiate. And the reason for that is, I'll go ahead and use the same exact load as here, I'll use another load actually. We'll go ahead and use this load here as an example. Now, to get the rate per mile on this load, you have to divide the miles with the rate. So we're going to do 1550, because that is the rate right here. As you can see, that's what the load is paying, 1550, correct? And we're going to divide it by 794 miles. So this comes down to 195. It really depends on the trucking company that you're working with, if this is a good rate or this is a bad rate, and you will know that as you start working with them. But for an example, let's say this trucking company decides they want at least $2 and let's say 10 cents a mile to move to Florida. They don't touch Florida unless they're getting paid $2 a mile. So the negotiation side of this is figuring out how to make this freight broker give you, pay you more money for this truck that you're working with to haul this. So very simple, I'm going to go ahead and show you, is if you know that's the rate, let's go ahead and put $17.50. Let's add $200 more and let's see where this gets to. Remember, always divide the rate by the miles. So always the rate or the price that you're looking for by the miles. That's the way this works to get the rate per mile. So we're going to do that, divided by 794. This comes out to $2.20 a mile. Now this is 10 cents more than what the company that you're working with is, you know, willing to go there for. So you have to know how to negotiate this load extra $200. Now the way you can negotiate this is pretty much, you know, trying to poke a little bit. You know, hey, yeah, you know, this company doesn't go down to Florida unless they're going for at least, you know, $2.10 a mile. You know, you think you could add a little bit more to the rate. You know, Florida's maybe hard to get out of. You know, there's not as much freight as there is in you know, in this area to get from here down there. You know, coming back from Florida could be a little bit complicated. So we want to see if you can pay a little extra. You'll find your ways of negotiating. You'll kind of, obviously, it's not going to come right off the back. You know, you're always going to have rebuttals to everything, but you're always going to find something and pretty much stick to a pattern that's going to work for you to maneuver your, you know, your way through and figure out how exactly you can negotiate this load. You know, you'll find you'll find something in the middle where it's going to work for you for the most part. For the most of the times, you know, that you're negotiating a load. Obviously, not all freight brokers are going to be open to, you know, negotiating, and it's because they're at the peak point of their, you know, to the peak point of their price that they can go up to. You know, they might not be able to go up to more, but it's always better to negotiate because, you know, one, if the trucking company doesn't want to go there for less, and you take them there for less than $2.10 a mile, then you're not doing your job. One. Two, the more that you get out of the revenue here, the rate, the more you get paid because you're getting paid for a percentage. So I'm going to give you an example. So let's say $15.50, that's the regular price, times 0.10, 10%. Let's say you know you're getting paid 10% as a freight dispatcher. You're getting $155 for this load moved, correct? Now, if you negotiate and, you know, the carrier wants a little bit more, this is also good for you, not just the carrier. Now I'll explain why. Because we asked for $17.50 times 0.10, you made it $175. Yeah, it's not a huge difference, but you made an extra $20 by just negotiating. And to me, $20 can come a long way. You know, if you start looking at it in the platform of what if I pretty much booked 10 loads out of the week, and 6 to 7 of them I've negotiated and got $20 more. So think about it, 20, let's say times 7, you made $140 extra a week just because of your negotiating skills. So that's why negotiating is crucial and it's important, because there's obviously going to be some, you know, states where these companies don't want to go to unless they're getting paid a certain amount per, you know, the rate per mile. And like I said, it benefits you as a dispatcher as well, because the more that this rate is, the more you'll make as an individual, as a dispatcher or a dispatching company, because the more the rate is, the more you get paid. Because at the end of the day, for the most part, like I was explaining, 80 to 90% of freight dispatchers, if not all, are working for a percentage of the gross revenue of the rate. So it is crucial and very important that you learn and find, you know, and it's not really that much about learning, it's more about finding a way to negotiate and finding something, you know, a tool or a certain pattern for you to negotiate that makes it easier for you to negotiate so you don't get stuck. And like I said, it's not always going to work, but it's never a bad idea to negotiate a load, especially if it's somewhere where, you know, this trucking company isn't their biggest desire to go to, and if they're going for what they're for the rate per mile that they want, that they don't want, and it's less, then that means that you as a freight dispatcher aren't doing your job. So what does that mean? that you're a good dispatcher but not a great dispatcher. So as I said, the secrets of becoming a great dispatcher is making sure that you know all the ins and outs, you know, all the little tools and secrets to make sure that you're doing your job duties in the most effective and correct way possible. Another thing, another little secret I want to go ahead and share with you guys, you know, and this is something very simple, and you'll actually see this in a couple of videos with me, because I completely love being organized, and I love being a person who can just go back into something and making sure and seeing that everything is pretty much in order. This here is an Excel spreadsheet, you know, nothing too complicated to maneuver through. This is pretty much just like loads that you as a freight dispatcher, as a freight dispatching company have moved. So this here would be the invoice number. This here would be the brokerage company that you worked with. This here is the rate. This here is the fuel advance, if the trucking company took a fuel advance. This here is the amount paid to the trucking company. This here is the date, and this here is the miles. Now, why as a freight dispatcher do you need this? Why would I want to take all these numbers down and, you know, have all this stuff on my computer just to take a memory? No, that's not it. So the reason why you want to have all this is, one, because if something happens and you lose a paper, or the broker can't find an invoice number, he lost a paper, or the trucker, something happens and they just need to know how many miles it was, you know, they need to know the rate. You have this to your possession to be able to pretty much get this detailed information. So we're going to use one of these as an example. We're going to go ahead and use this one here. So let's say Global Highway and gives us a call and says, hey, yeah, you know that haul that you, that general freight that you took on, you know, on 4/13/2018, I totally forgot how many miles it was, and I totally forgot the invoice number. So here we go, we have the miles right there, and then we have the invoice right here. So something that could have been more complicated, let's say if you're like, oh yeah, you know, I don't have that, I don't keep record of anything, I don't have any of that stuff, could have became complicated, and yeah, maybe it won't affect you as a freight dispatcher, but you know, you're pretty much so organized that you have these things on file and you have these things with you that you can help not just yourself but the brokerage company or the trucking company be more at ease. Or let's say the trucking company gives you a call and they ask you for this information, you have it here. So what does that mean? That the trucking company sees value. Why? Because they see that you're not just doing your job, but you're doing a little bit more to make sure that you're keeping yourself organized and keeping everything situated and pretty much keeping everything in a complied way, to the point where, you know, if they ever just need some additional help, or they need, you know, they need to find something out about a load, they know that they can kind of count on you to have this information, because you're such an organized individual. And this is something good not only for a freight dispatcher, you know, just an individual, but this is also good for a freight dispatching company, because you're pretty much keeping a well-known record about everything. So you're never gonna fall into one of those situations where you're not sure where something is, or you know, or they give you a call and you're just clueless on things. You know, this is definitely something that I believe could be used to your advantage and can make you, you know, different. And like I said, it takes very small details to be a good dispatcher and then a great dispatcher. I also want to go ahead and get through Google and explain to you guys why Google is such an important thing. So we want to go ahead and put, let's say a broker calls in, says they need dunnage. So we're going to go ahead and put dunnage here. Oops, sorry, spelled that totally wrong. Dunnage. So dunnage is pretty much, and I'll show you an image about it, it's pretty much a certain, you know, divider in between freight. So as you can see here, I'll show you this one. That right there is dunnage. So it's pretty much like a, you know, a 4x4 piece of wood, or a divider as they would call it, that would divide the freight from kind of colliding or touching each other. Now the reason why you always want to have Google a Google tab open is, because if you're not sure about something and you're not sure what exactly this this tool or equipment that this broker is speaking to you about, and maybe they just don't have the time to explain it to you, you can easily just go ahead and look it up. Let's say they go ahead and tell you that they need like edge protectors. Edge protectors. We'll put an example for flatbed. So pretty much these are edge protectors here, like things like like this, like little, they go on like the corners of the loads. Let's say you're not familiar with it and they go ahead and explain that to you, and they kind of just give you like a little detail about it. You can just go on Google and look it up, and it is something that you can easily say, oh, okay, you know what, let me call my driver and make sure that he has these edge protectors, and see if just kind of make sure that he has them. So you always want to have a Google tab open, because you always, if you're not sure about something, or you just don't understand what exactly this broker is telling you, that it needs this certain equipment, and you have no idea about it, you don't want to sound too lost. You kind of just get a little bit of detail about it, and you go on Google, and it'll pretty much show you exactly what it is. Now, as far as Google, that's where I wanted to touch base. You always want to make sure that you're able to find out what these people are talking about if they need a certain equipment that you're not sure about. So Google is always a tab that needs to be open. Google Maps as well. Let's say you call a load and there's no miles on the load board itself. There's no miles on it. It doesn't necessarily say, oh yeah, this load is going, let's say we'll use Lakeland, Florida, and it's going to, we'll go ahead and use Baltimore. So we'll use Baltimore. So let's say that on one of these load boards here, you have you have the information, you have the brokerage service, you have the weight, and you have the length, and you pretty much have the where it's going to and the destination, the date, but you don't have this here. You don't have how many miles it is. For the most part, they all will have the miles that of the distance from pickup to destination. But if you don't, that's what you have this for. So that way you can kind of generate what the rate per mile will be. So let's say you call a load and they tell you, yeah, this load is going to pay $1,600, but you know that there's no type of miles on there on the load board itself for you to do the equation yourself. That's what you have this for. So now you know that this was $1,600. So what we're going to go ahead and do is put $1,600, and we're going to divide it by the miles here, because since we didn't know how many miles there was, because the broker didn't put it on his post, or let's say he just kind of ran through it and didn't give us how many miles it will be from pickup to the destination, we could do it ourselves just by looking from the city of pickup to the city of drop off. So we're going to divide this by 947, and now we have the rate per mile. So I believe Google Maps is something that should always be open. Your tabs should always be open with all the tools that you will use to make your life as a dispatcher a little bit easier.